Hi everyone, Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom, coming to you today from St. Basil School outside of Moscow, where I'm privileged to interview Konstantin Malofeev, a financier, a builder of a great media company, and a builder of one of the finest, what we would call in America, prep schools that I have ever seen. A prep school devoted to traditional learning and to traditional Christianity. Konstantin, it's a pleasure. You're also my host here in Moscow, and I appreciate your generosity of time and bringing me here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Why do you think that Americans for so many generations hated and misunderstood Russians?
Because America was led by wrong people. And these wrong people misunderstood not only Russian, but Americans as well, as we can see. Look at this woke with LGBT plus and all these genders and the cancel culture and this proclamation against mother and father, which has to be parent one and parent two. These people who wanted to build this post-human and definitely post-Christian world, they did not understand Russia because Russia is very traditional. Russia is very Christian. Maybe for your viewers that would be news, but communism is over in Russia 30 years ago. We live in another Russia, and you saw in my school, Christian, Orthodox school.
A very, very, very traditional Orthodox Christian school, but Americans think that communism still flourishes here. They are well behind the times, are they not?
They're not. They're not at all. Supporters of Communist Party in Russia are something like 10%, less than, and for youngsters even less. And I would tell you that supporters of pre-revolution imperial Russia, that you can see here, where the island of this pre-revolutionary Russia in modern Moscow, this school, they have more supporters among youngsters, among students who love this. And we have a lot of believers. Russia built or rebuilt, let me say, after Soviet era, 30,000 churches, hundreds monasteries were rebuilt, reconstructed, restored, or built from scratch within the last 30 years. This is for Christianity. This is the biggest triumph ever.
How did an Orthodox Christian society, which is contemporary Russia today, come out of the ashes of the old Soviet Union? How did that happen?
Because of blood of our martyrs. This is very similar to what happened with Christianity of the first ages. Christianity started with martyrs. When you remember, they were eaten by lions, they were fired up in Neron time, and because of their blood, their prayers, and martyr is a evidence, yeah? Martyr in Latin, this is witness in English. So martyrdom, this is evidence of us to believe in heaven, that we believe that eternal life more important for us than this life. Yes, please.
Did the Russian people harbor a traditional sense of Christianity even during the repressive communist and Soviet years?
Not all of them, but after revolution we have so many martyrs that a Russian church had known within 1,000 years of its existence. After revolution we had more than 1,000 new martyrs, the people who did not follow atheistic, communist, Bolshevik approach. They were murdered, killed by Bolsheviks, they tortured, so these people suffered a lot. And with their blood, with their prayers, led by our saint Tsar Nicholas II, because of them, we have this renaissance of Christianity in our days. We based on their blood and their evidence of their faith.
How did Russia transform from a planned central economy to a free market economy that it has today?
That's happened in late 80s and early 90s. Unfortunately, with the help of USAID and other consultants from US. And this move from a planned centralized economy to the free market economy was a disaster. That was a disorder. People became to be poor immediately, 99% of them. And 1% of them became to be very rich. We call them oligarchs now, but of course they are not close to Wall Street oligarchs, let me say, the people who is behind BlackRock or KKR or State Street, who is behind Federal Reserve. But these small Russian oligarchs, they helped. They were servants to help international investors, so-called, to seize, to grab, to make money on Russian Soviet assets. I would give an example. I knew this very well because I started my career as a young lawyer those days, back to early 90s, so I remember this. How it was. Soviet Academy of Science made evaluation that all assets that has to be privatized in Russian Federation has to be evaluated like 2 billion rubles, that time Soviet rubles. But after reformers backed by Soros and others, USAID consultants in Russian government, they voluntarily decided that 2 trillion is too much. Let it be 16 billion. So 1% from the real value. And they made vouchers, such a certificate, for each citizen of Russian Federation back to year 1993. So based on these vouchers, you can buy a piece of national welfare, national prosperity. Of course, people sell this, sometimes for the bottle of vodka, sometimes for a few rubles, to these speculants. And the speculants sell this after to the guys like Soros. So they made a fortune because they bought with 99% discount what were built within 100 years, started from Tsarist time through all Soviet era. Our heavy industry, our oil and metallurgical companies. And that's how these people became to be oligarchs, and that's how Soros and other so-called foreign investors made huge money on Russia in the 90s.
And how did a middle class develop in Russia, a middle class that did not exist under communism?
Before Putin came, before the beginning of 20s, in 90s nobody takes care about middle class, as I told you. That was a small percentage of people who helped this privatization and foreign investors, and other people who became more poor than in Soviet time. Relatively, they have not been so poor, so they can eat. There's nobody is in Russia. We are a social state. Everybody has an apartment, which is different to America, because in Soviet time everybody lived in their apartment, and they were privatized for nothing. So people had their apartment. They didn't live at the street, but still comparable to this new rich, or so-called new Russian rich. Of course, people were very poor. But when Putin came in the beginning of 2000, it started a different economy, and this middle class started to appear. Why? Because oligarchs were limited by Putin. Their growth by other population were limited. They became not to be so rich. The difference between 10% of poorest and 10% of richest became to be less than was in Yeltsin's time. So that was the start of Putin's policy. Putin arrested in jail the most arrogant oligarchs, and other oligarchs understood that this country belonged not to them more. So this government belonged to government again. So that was his first time in the beginning of 2000 when he just came, and thanks to his victory, we live now in the country when you have a lot of middle-class people, people who live a much better life than in Soviet time. Much, much better.
How I wish the American public and American leadership before Donald Trump we'll talk about President Trump in a minute, could understand that the Russian people are happy and prosperous and free. The Americans don't understand that. In fact, the American elites don't even believe that. In fact, the neocons think that they know what's better for Russia than what the Russian people want for Russia.
The problem of this Leo Strauss pupils that they believe that they know better for everybody how to live. They want to teach all people all around the world, Chinese how to be better Chinese, Russian how to be better Russians, so they know better than we are who we are. We are happy with President Putin because he's the best Russian leader for 100 years. We're happy to have such a leader. We never had a leader like him since Nicholas I. At Nicholas I's time, our population grew up, 30% within 25 years. Russia grew up economically more than the U.S.
Right.
Being number one in the Europe. And only when Putin came, we can feel now that we have a leader who thinks about national interest about more than of anything else. In Soviet time, we had not bad leaders, but they were thinking about, for example, their communities all around the globe. And they were thinking about, that Soviet citizens or Russian people have to pay, for example, for revolutions in Africa or to support, some communist regime somewhere else, and we paid for this. This is very close to what globalists did with Americans last years, when you have to pay for regimes somewhere if they proclaim that they goes to democratic way and they support liberal values, and for this, billions and billions were paid through USAID.
What is globalism?
Globalism is a cancer. Globalism is a cancer at humankind. When people believe that they knows better what to do, but in reality, they kill alive cells, because alive cells in mankind, this is passionate people, patriots of their own nations, believers. Globalism do not allow us to be believers. You can't be Christian or Muslim if you're a globalist. You have to believe in globalism. This is a sort of religion, of sect. And the best people in any nation, this is the people who believe in the face of their ancestors, of their parents, who patriots of their countries. So it means that who belonged to communism became to be a cancer cell for their own nation. This is the problem. So globalism, this is not something that could be a scholastic experiment or idea. This is something that crash and ruin your natural organic nation and natural organic destiny and national organic mission. So it means that you're Russia, you have to do what is good for Russia. For France, you have to do what is good for France. But globalists, they teach us what is good for them, for globalists.
This brings us to the concept of realism, that a country has a legitimate sovereignty and legitimate security needs, and every other country must respect that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That is a major awakening in United States foreign policy. I mean, look at United States foreign policy towards Russia. It's like you turn the battleship around on a dime in 50 days. The Russians must be ecstatic at what President Trump has done vis-a-vis Russia since he became president the second time.
And we appreciate this. We understand what he did. We understand that what he's doing, this is of course not in best interest of Russia. This is in best interest of US. But Russia national interest now in line with what he's doing. And we appreciate it because we talk to somebody pragmatic. Like you can say that, listen, this is good for you and this is good for me, let's make a deal. Because previously, with Biden administration, with all these globalist neocons, you have no discussion because they say, you have to do this because according to our sect rules or our secret books, you have to do this. I say, why? They said, there is no discussion about why. Because we dictate you to do this. or otherwise you are demon, you are evil, and we would do the page of time with demonized face of you.
What is your understanding of the origins of the special military operation in Ukraine?
The very deep root origin of special military operation is that we are a divided nation. We are a Russian people, divided nation, for three parts: Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. We were one country back 100 years ago. When Bolsheviks made a revolution in 1917, they split us for many so-called Soviet republics, us, Russian people. Some of these Soviet republics were split with people of different nationality, like, for example, Georgia. They respected old Christian nationality. We know them. We live with them 1,000 years nearby. We know that they are different. They are Orthodox, but they're different. But Ukraine and Belarus, they're not different. They are us. There is no difference at all, not genetically, not culturally, no language-wise. Ukrainian language appeared just 100 years ago as it is now. And last 30 years, they invented a lot of new words to say this is a new language. Our families divided, and half of Ukraine were created as a civilized area just back 200 years ago when Catherine the Great conquered this area from Turks that called Wild Field those days, and build up all this, Donbass, Odessa, Nikolaev, Crimean city, all of this were built in Catherine the Great time. And Russian Empire invested a lot. That was for us our mission, to civilize this area. So this area was civilized, that was our area, our people lived there, and suddenly, 30 years ago, that became to be a sovereign state because Soviet Union split it, so we were separated in different 15 sovereign state in year 1991. But as I told you, some of them, as Georgia or Armenia, they're separate because of nationality and language.
Right.
But they speak the same language. They're Russian. That's us. We have to be united. The deep root and the origin of special military operation, that if somebody separated part of us from us, there are two ways of us to join together back. First, peaceful way, like with Belarusian. We're peacefully coming closer and closer with Lukashenko, Belarus, and now we have a union state, which is almost same state. You know, we never have any fight between Russia and Belarus. We are biggest friends. We economically tighten, and this is only to prosperity of our people. And you see how these globalists hate Lukashenko for this. And now they very like Ukrainian leaders who nothing did for their country. Look at the results of Belarus, economical results, GDP per capita, and look at Ukrainian results, how poor they are. But USAID and other sources of this world so like Ukrainian because most important for them were to be anti-Russian. And now that is why there is no peaceful way for us to be split. The deep root of this, that people who live there, they want to live in their own country, in Russia. And if they're not allowed to be in Russia, you know, they separated from Ukraine. They created Donetsk People Republic, Lugansk People Republic, Crimea separately. And after, they voted, according to the first article of United Nations, to join Russia.
Right.
That's what's happened. If that would be the real voting without any threat in other regions of Ukraine, half of Ukraine would join Russia. Even now, after the war.
How was Russia provoked?
How it has been provoked?
Yes, into the special military operation.
By President Biden personally, first. Can you remember that September year 21, Putin wrote a letter to NATO leaders and European leaders and to President Biden with national security demand from Russia. Like he just sent this letter at the diplomatic channel with all these points that our national security has to be guaranteed instead of provocation and acceleration of the violence in this area. It means, first, NATO couldn't make any move closer to Russia because that means a threat. Keeping in mind that NATO promised 20 years ago, didn't move east, and it moved after Berlin Wall collapse. And so we do not believe in your words more. So we need written guarantees from you that Ukraine would not be in NATO more. So we need a guarantee that you would not put your troops and your bases in NATO again, because this is a threat for Russia. What President Biden answered for this in Geneva, I think in the beginning of January of year 22, 1 month before special military operation, he answered, we do not take care. I didn't even listen to, I didn't even look at this letter. He didn't want to prevent not only the war, to prevent a conflict. He provoked this first diplomatic and then military conflict.
Do you think that the United States of America, under President Biden, attempted to use Ukraine as a proxy war against Russia, as a battering ram to drive President Putin from office?
Of course, definitely. More than that, as I understood, President Biden had a very personal relations to Ukrainian issue generally, and not only because of Hunter, and even before, because President Biden was vice president back to Obama time, when President Putin returned to his office after Medvedev's turns, back to year 12. And President Biden was in charge to avoid this, to push Putin do not come back to his office. And he tried to, through their agents in Moscow, to put maximum efforts for Putin do not come back to his office. So Biden, even from those days, they have a personal conflict with Putin, because Biden wanted to interfere Russian internal affairs against President Putin. That back to year 12, before everything. And so with Ukraine, you remember what's happened after, in year 14, and after Hunter Biden, this all corrupted schemes with Burisma in Ukraine, which were supported by Biden, who was a vice president, with this general prosecutor Shokin, who tried it to walk against, or to start a lawsuit against, not lawsuit, but investigation against Hunter Biden's partner, and Joe Biden, who's been a vice president, pushed Ukrainian officials against this general prosecutor. You remember all of this.
What happened in 2014? What was the Maidan revolution?
That was provoked, done by foreign intelligence services. I don't know who
was done by Mrs. Newland and the CIA and MI6.
Of course. Who of them played the...
to overthrow the legitimately elected president of Ukraine, who wanted it to be neutral like Austria.
Exactly. And more than that, can you imagine how they played? They even brought the clowns, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, of Germany, and French to Yanukovych. When Yanukovych wanted to stop the Maidan by force, by police force, he was stopped because these three Minister of Foreign Affairs came to him and gave him a written guarantee that if he would announce a new election, so they guarantee that Maidan would stop, and let's wait until the next election. 1 day after they gave this guarantee, Maidan shooting started from these people at Maidan. So that was definitely coup d'etat against legally elected President Yanukovych. And by the way, if President Zelensky are telling us now that he's a president of, even because of military situation in Ukraine, he could not be revoted. That's why even 1 year after his elected time finished, he's still legitimate. But let me give you another example. President Yanukovych is the last president of Ukraine who was elected by all parts of Ukraine according to constitution of Ukraine. Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk voted for President Yanukovych, not for Poroshenko, not for Zelensky. The three regions did not vote because they became to be Russia. But according to Ukrainian constitution, if we're talking about the legal side, there is a Yanukovych who was the last president of Ukraine, never re-elected. So when President Zelensky trying to be a good lawyer and tell us about the legitimacy, we always can can tell him that, listen, okay, let's look at Yanukovych then. And let's call Yanukovych, who is now a veteran here, retired somewhere nearby Moscow, and Yanukovych, the only legitimate leader of the Ukraine.
What will it take for the Ukraine war to be ended?
How long?
No, what will have to happen?
First, the meeting between two great leaders, Putin and Trump. Without this meeting, nothing would happen in this world war. First, they have to meet and to talk not about Ukraine and about new world order, because the world order that liberals built up, all these neocons, it's collapsed, it's crushed. It's nothing, just disaster. So we have to build another world order. Of course, calling for China and India, join us. I don't know who this would be from Europe. I'm not sure that Trump and Putin is ready to see Ursula von der Leyen as a world leader. So it means that it has to be country leaders. Who these country leaders? Would they invite British or French or German? I don't know. But nevertheless, these two have to meet. And they have to discuss a lot of questions, including this Ukrainian war. And this Ukrainian war, what does it mean? What does it mean to stop Ukrainian war? First, we have to have somebody from Ukraine at the table. We have now not legitimate Zelensky, quite arrogant in his behavior, as we saw, with whom we can discuss what if this guy is completely inappropriate for the role he's playing now. Of course, he's a good actor. I saw his movie. He's a Russian actor. He's not Ukrainian actor. He's a Russian actor because he always speaks Russian. We never heard him speak Ukrainian 40 years of his life. He's comedy actor, Russian comedy actor. I saw the movie with him. And so he plays now a brutal role of the guy, who's like always dressed in, I don't know where, done Indonesian suit or whatever, what is that? Because he's showing that he suffered from the war. Why he suffered by his sweatshirt, I don't know. But he believed that it's nice. Okay, in this nice sweatshirt, he's playing this brutal role.
Right.
But this is not more for role now. This is not more play. Because he could play before when there was a war between Biden, let me say, and Putin, when he was just like a marionette, and he was governed from US. Now, US is telling him, now go to the peace, table. We would tell you what to do. And he didn't switch the role yet. So now we would see how he would switch, how he would make the shift.
When President Putin and President Trump meet, what will President Putin say to Donald Trump? What will his goal be?
The goal of President Putin, as he said, and he is very straightforward years and years, this is the protection of national interest of Russia. And he never changed his priority. He's the man who serves Russian interest. And he identified himself as a Russian leader. And he would tell the same as he said to President Biden before, but President Biden didn't listen to him. He would say that any construction of the former world and global security has to include Russian interest. And Russian red lines, Russian national security interest, this, that, and that. And we have to include this in this peace treaty. If not, this peace treaty would not be stable.
Does President Putin believe that if the United States leaves NATO, NATO will collapse?
Definitely. That means, I think that any expert elder than 16 years old would agree with this.
Understood. Tell me about the Russian economy as a result of the sanctions. The Americans thought they would cripple the Russian economy, and that has not happened.
In the beginning of this war, that was two mistakes. One mistake from Russian side, another mistake from American side. On the Russian side, we underestimate the difficulty of the special military operation. We believe that in a few days, we could do this blitzkrieg, and that's how we can change a regime to more friendly to Russia, and that's how to protect our national security interests. We underestimate the link between intelligence, American intelligence, British intelligence with Ukrainians, that they already fully supported. But after 3 years, we made our, we got our lessons, and we understood now how to fight even in this environment. And Americans made their mistake. They underestimate the quality and stability of Russian economy. So they believed that after sanctions, within a couple of months, Russia would collapse. This is ridiculous. We are the richest country in the world. We have 20% of natural deposit of the world. We have the biggest territory. We have more water than anybody else in the world. We fully prepared for any isolation. This is Belgium could be isolated. Russia could not be isolated at all. So it means that when sanctions came, it started like the process of Russian economy growth, not decline. First, Western companies leave the country. Can you imagine? They invested billions in this market, and they just leave the market.
Just to interject here, your Foreign Minister Lavrov, your friend, estimated that American companies alone lost $330 to $350 billion in revenue because of the American sanctions.
I heard this estimation. I have to agree that it has to be at this level. I couldn't say it's 300 or 200 or 400, but it's hundreds. This is not billions. This is hundreds of billions. And after they lost this, what does it mean? That this space, where this vacuum, has to be filled by somebody.
China.
It was filled by China, partially by Russian business. So Russian business grew up. First. Second, okay, Europe, does not buy Russian gas more. Fine. But China does. So what does it mean? So you mean that how many we supply? 30% of world gas? This 30% would fire up in the air? That was a plan? Somebody planned this like this? I think the Doge department has to fire this consultant who are thinking about to sanction Russia like this.
Right.
So they did an awful job. So they made Russian economy stronger than before sanctions. And point number 3, Russian military complex. In Soviet time, after the war, 50 years, Soviet Union built up a creme de la creme, best of the best military complex in the world. It was based in a different provincial city of Russia. After 90s, when Soviet Union collapsed, and Russian economy in Yeltsin time became to be the sort of oil and gas economy, dedicated to the West, these provincial cities goes to decline because we didn't need such a lot of military equipment. So we had a demographic problem, we had a lack of jobs there, so we have social problems in the city. Can you imagine? They have a renaissance now. 3 years, they have 3 shifts per day. So people have jobs there. They have all the index of happiness. The social index is growing up in all these cities all around Moscow, St. Petersburg. Because only in Moscow, St. Petersburg, you have all these financial giants and you have these service companies. But in provincial cities, you have this industry. And now all of them work. So this is number 3, what happened with Russia because of sanctions, because of war. So now we have growing economy. With our business replaced Western brands. With our oil and gas now just shifted from the west to east, and our military complex, it means our institutes, our engineers, best in the world, now they have 100% full job, full occupied job. So why we have to suffer from this? So these sanctions played a good role for economy, but They really hurt only one category. They hurt oligarchs. The people who made money in 90s, helping the West to make their money at poor Russians. How do you think these oligarchs, how popular they are in the country? So nobody takes care about do they suffer or not.
Right.
So they really, whom they hurt, the biggest their supporter in the country. Bravo. What could we say to the people who works in OFAC to fight with Russia in economical way?
What did the sanctions do with respect to Russia's trade with and closeness to China?
They make us as close as it could be.
Is this a good thing for Russia to be close to China?
They are our friends now. They are our closest friends because the West, our enemy, and the best West can do for us not to be so close with China show that they are not enemy. When President Macron are playing some game or some role, he's not a global thinker. But President Trump and his administration is global thinking. They could not avoid the issue about our relations with China. Because now we already signed a contract for 10 years for a lot for import and export. We are very close already.
So that relationship must last for 10 years, no matter what the Trump administration and the Putin administration agreed to.
If they wouldn't agree, it would be another 20 years. So because all this, this is heavy industry agreements. So they works for years. So for example, if tomorrow sanctions would be lifted and American business would come back to Russia, of course, when they would pay penalties for this. Because they run away illegally according to Russian legislation. But even if we would imagine they would return tomorrow, it would take years to get the same level of investment climate as Chinese has now.
Got it, got it. You yourself were sanctioned, personally sanctioned by the American government. For what? For what reason?
For support of Crimea and Donbass in year 14. And I supported Crimea and Donbass. I'm not against this. This is American, this is their deal, what they can do. If they want to sanction me, this is their issue. They can sanction me only in the West, because in Russia I'm a respected patriot, and no any sanction can hurt me in Russia. More than that, I can hurt American business here. This is why I made a lawsuit against Google when they banned our YouTube channel of my media in YouTube. We lawsuited Google here. We made them bankrupt in Russia. And we got 10 billion rubles, which is $100 million from them, and sent it to the purpose of military operation as a donation. And now we are chasing them all around the world with our execution list in a different jurisdiction. So, and we would continue this fight until Google would not switch me on YouTube.
Why would Google not switch you on YouTube?
Because they're following American sanctions. And the American company. The problem of sanctions is that America believe in their legislation, you know, you've been judged, that America believe in supranational sovereignty of their decisions. So if there is a decision of United States government, that has to be executed all around the globe. But this is, you see, this is a conflict with national legislation of different countries. And so it means that in Russia, this is violation of Russian law to execute an American sanctions. And in Turkey, this is violation of Turkey law to execute an American sanctions.
Will Russia stay in BRICS?
Yes, for now. But as the revolutionary administration of Trump are moving, I wouldn't be shocked if tomorrow Trump would announce that against of BRICS, let's make another community, including the America, because America is now looks like a BRICS country, because America is against globalism.
How detrimental was it for President Biden to refuse to speak to President Putin for 3 years, and for Secretary of State Blinken to refuse to speak to Foreign Minister Lavrov for 3 years?
I have no word to explain, what they did, because diplomatic channel has to be open any minute between two nuclear superpowers. Remember what's happened with Caribbean crisis? That's because they didn't speak. After they made a direct phone line between Kremlin and White House, exactly to avoid such a problem. And 3 years, Biden decided that he is smarter than anybody in the universe, and that he wouldn't speak to President Putin, and that means that he would bring peace to the planet. No, it means that he brings us just to the door of Third World War. That's what he did. And when Burns, the head of CIA, was the only high official of U.S. who visited Moscow, all these days, what does it mean? It didn't mean that they had no channel. They had a channel. It means that they played that they had no channel. How crazy you have to be for PR, and I mean for public relations in the world, to play that two nuclear superpowers do not communicate each other.
Well, thanks be to God, we have an entirely different relationship coming. How significant will May 9th be to the Russian people this year, and how revolutionary would it be for Donald Trump to be present here in Moscow on May 9th?
I think that if President Trump would continue in doing what he was doing, when he would come to Moscow on 9th of May, people would wave the flag like Roosevelt came on 9th of May of 1945. If President Trump would continue in the direction what he's doing now with Ukraine, to push Ukraine for this peace treaty, for ceasefire, for election, and to make the real deal for years, not just to stop now, but to avoid any crisis for future between Russia and Ukraine. But more important, I hope that before 9th of May, they would meet somewhere to discuss a new world order. They would discuss a new Yalta, because 80 years after that victory, we have a very different world, and we need a new construction of this world, and we need to be safety. And to be safety, it means respect of each other identity, and that nobody teach other what is human rights and what to do, and how to be Democrat, how to be liberal, how to be like us. We are different. We're different from US. You are different from China. China different from India. We have to respect that we are different, but we have to respect rules of international affairs, and we have to respect agreements that we do, and we have to respect others with their own destiny and their own will to live and how to live.
Konstantin, do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
Even though we're spending 5 days together here in Moscow.
Yes, I have a question. I want to ask you what his relations would be, on your opinion now, of Americans to Putin.
I think that Russia has a PR job to do, a public relations job to do, because the Biden administration spent 3 years demonizing Putin. Even the present Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, when he was a senator from Florida, said horrible things about President Putin. It will take a long time to undo that, but I believe it will begin with an abrazo vert, a hug between President Putin and President Trump, and them being seen together in a variety of different environments, and coming out with agreements that will produce prosperity and peace. But it's not going to change overnight. I mean, generations of Americans, unfortunately, have been raised thinking that Russia is evil and the Russians are backwards. They have no idea of the freedom and prosperity that exists in this country, which, thanks to you, I've been privileged to see. They need to know that. So the Russians need the Russian government needs to engage in public relations and outreach.
We would hope that our interview would be a small step ahead of telling truth about Russia.
I think so as well. It's been a pleasure to interview you. I know you're very busy and there are many demands on your time. Giving all this time to me and to my listeners is very joyful. Thank you, Konstantin.
Thank you, Judge.
Of course. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom here in Moscow.